near bankruptcy of Iceland was caused by the subprime mortgage meltdown in Southern California. That's pretty amazing. And of course it was caused by a combination of very poor monetary policy and greed on the behalf of part of the banking industry primarily. And I think it was really triggered, in a sense, by a lot of the tax cuts that were put in place under President Reagan. So it had been coming for some time. Now, we got to the present day, and the economy is starting to grow again. Despite, I'm sure a lot of people at Facebook are kind of depressed, but but overall, it looks like it's growing. The last quarter of 2011, the Commerce Department reported the economy grew at a rate of 3%. That's much higher than it's been. Personal income jumped. Americans earned $13 trillion in 2011. That sounds really good, right? But no, here's the problem. 1/3 of those gains went to the 15,600 super rich households in the top 0.1% of our nation. This is from Robert Reich and Emmanuel Sides at the University of California. Also, according to Emmanuel Sides, the top 1% pocketed 93% of the economic gains in 2010-2011. I think significant for probably most of us here, the bottom 90% of people saw their incomes drop by almost $4,800 in real terms from 2000, held in real dollars. So the top 1/10%, the distance between that group of people and the rest of the 1%, the 9/10 left, is now almost the same as the distance between the 1% and the 99% that's been made so very popular by the Occupy movement. And that's an amazing, when you really think about how much money is now coagulated in the hands of a tiny number of wealthy people, it's really, really extraordinary. But this is a very amazing thing. As we look at that, and you know, those of us who focus on poverty, as I have most of my life, part of the reason I got into fundraising and doing stuff with women's organizations is because a disproportionate number of women, of course, are poor. We have to figure out a method for that. We focus so much on that. We didn't stop and look at wealthy people. And so wealthy people started to say, how is life improving for these wealthy people? If they get wealthier and wealthier all the time, their lives must be better, right? Actually, no. And they started to notice a lot of things, and there's a lot of questions people had. For example, a question, why is a baby born in El Salvador more likely to survive than a baby born in Detroit? Like, that's weird. Okay, that's not about money. These seem to be economic problems, but they are not. Why do Canadians live 3 years longer than we do when it's freezing up there? Why do we have that? They asked this question. Why, in a recent JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, article showed that older Americans are significantly less healthy than their British counterparts, and in fact, the poorest British people can expect to live longer than the richest Americans. So we could see that simply focusing on the economy was not going to be the issue. And we started looking at a lot of other problems, number of homicides, prison rates, substance abuse, high school dropout rates, and so on. And there was a big breakthrough, I'm kind of oversimplifying, but there was a big breakthrough when two public health researchers named Kate Pickett and Richard Wilkinson, they're British, decided to take all the information from all the developed countries on about 10 pressing social issues and said, let's set up a grid, and let's make this side of it the pressing social issue, say homicide, and let's see what's in the bottom. Let's see what always comes at the bottom. So homicide, you say, well, is it because we have the highest homicide rate in the developed world? Is it because we have easy access to guns? No, other developed countries actually have easier access. Is it because we have violent media? I mean, these are problems, but no, that is not the main variable. Other countries have more violent media. What they found over and over is the bottom of that scale was income inequality. And I want to show you their slides just right now. Can people hear me? This is rates of imprisonment. Look at the United States, way up there. This is where you want to be, right? Here's all the usual suspects: Japan, Finland, Norway, Sweden. And people often say to me, we can't be like Finland. I know, we don't speak Finnish. But can we just get on the line here? Do we have to be way up there?
You're going to need the mic.
Sure.
I'm sure.
So, can you hear me now? So here, they also, people said, well, States is a huge country, so they also broke this down by state. And any of you who want, you can go to this Equality Trust. There's hundreds of slides. I just pulled out a few of them to show you. This is homicide rates. There's the United States. There's everybody else in the developed world. Okay? This is homicide rates in unequal states. You can see California has very high homicide rate. Teenage birth rates. You know, tell me, people say, well, Finland, Norway, Denmark, these are very homogeneous countries. Is that why their teenagers don't get pregnant? I'm not following the logic of it. This is the most tragic one in my mind. Infant mortality. Look where we are. More than Portugal. Portugal is a very poor country, really. It's barely a developed country. More than Israel. I mean, people live in rather a lot of tension there. And here we are in the United States. Okay? It's extraordinary. And they also found that if we reduced income inequality, look what would happen. We just became the average of the four most equal countries. Look what would happen here. This is my favorite. We would work 2 months less per year for the same wages and better benefits. So, their conclusion, and this is the thing I think we have to sit with a little bit. This is the main point of my speech. This is their conclusion. Economic growth, for so long the great engine of progress, has in the rich countries largely finished its work. Further improvements in the quality of life now depend on community and how we relate to each other. And I think it kind of requires sitting with that quietly for a little bit. It's a big retooling in how we think. You know, for example, it means that if I earn $500,000 a year, okay, that's okay. If I earn $500,000 a year, you know, and I'm like your regular person who earns $500,000 a year. What is it that I want? Well, yeah, more money. That's right. I want to earn another. I think, well, I'd be happier if I mean, I even see this in myself. I'm not criticizing that, but I always think I'd be happier if I earn another $20,000. And then if I ever do, I'm still like, still more. But what happens when a $500,000 person earns another $500,000, becomes $1 million wage earner? Nothing happens to them in our country. They do not live longer. They are no less likely to be shot. Their kids are no less likely to get pregnant. Nothing good happens to them for that extra $500,000. They would be better off moving to Finland or Cuba, which would be closer. And so, what happens in here is, you know, the Christian Science Monitor says the standard of living for Americans has fallen longer and more steeply over the past 3 years than at any time since the U.S. government began recording it 5 decades ago. Now, we could say that for rich people, their lives aren't any better for getting rich, but for poor people, as the standard of living falls, every day a drop in the standard of living, is quality, is it could be even fatal. I mean, it's very disastrous. So, as I said, Pickett and Wilson did not stop there. They started to say, what do we want to look at in terms of healthy communities? You know what? I'm just going to ask you to push the slide. You want? So, they said it was a deep devotion to the common good. And this is a definition of the common good, a kind of a short one. You have a lot of information about the common good on your things here. Let's go to the next slide. This is what a common good frame does for us, okay? It says that, I love Peter Moran. Some of you may know Dorothy Day, who was a founder of the Catholic Worker Movement. This was her teacher. He said, our job is to create a society in which it's easy to be good. And Peter Moran, he wrote this in the 1930s. People would often say to him, oh, are you a communist? And, you know, he would say, I don't think so. He'd say, no, all I think is our job is to create a society in which it's easy to be good. And I think it's a wonderful kind of nonpartisan view of what is our job, and it's non-ideological. This one, that people are more important than profit. Now, a lot of you are my age or around my age. You know, we used to say that all the time. People are more important than profit. And when I even wrote it on the slide, I gave this similar presentation to another group, and with a bunch of young people, and they were like, people are more important than profit, and they were writing it down. And then I was talking. I teach at the University of California. I was talking to my students, and I said, people are more important than profit. My social work students, and they're like, that's a great phrase. I thought, my God, we've got to bring that back. The notion that we define our communities in terms of happiness, which of course the government of Bhutan, which is a little bitty country above Tibet, has started this sort of gross national happiness index, which is great. And several counties in the United States have started to look at that, gross national happiness. It's a great little way of thinking about things, and it's very non-economic. So let's just look at one more thing, a couple more things. This is California in terms of just tax policy, okay? We just kind of narrow into one set of policies. We are leaving the common good behind. If you could just do the next two. This one, this is our situation right now. Huge dropout rate, 7 million people with no health insurance. It's not for lack of spending money either. If we go to the next slide. It's, you know, we've spent a lot on prisons. We built 23 prisons in 23 years. And who knows, who can tell me why we built that many prisons?
3 strikes.
No strikes. 3 strikes is part of it. We still have a death penalty as part of it. But you know one big reason why we built that many? Is because people looked at 3rd grade, people who flunked 3rd grade, and they said we have to build a place for them to go when they graduate. Instead of fixing, this is God's own truth, instead of fixing 2nd grade, we just built a holding pen for them at the other end. 23 5,000 bed prisons, 1 extension in the University of California. This is ridiculous. These are not our values, okay? So what I want to talk to you about today is kind of this notion that one of our jobs is to elevate the idea that policy, a lot of times people say to me, particularly nonprofits, I don't understand policy. Policy is very complicated. And it is complicated. I don't have any doubt about that. But what is policy built around? Values. You know, economists will tell you, I read this economist recently who said, I can tell you exactly how many homeless people a town will have, how vibrant the arts and culture community will be, how good the schools are. He said, I can tell you that just by looking at their tax structure. Because taxes are a mirror of values. All of our policies reflect a set of values. And people are able to talk about values. You don't have to have a master's from the Golden School or any other place to be able to talk about values. But people don't engage in these kind of conversations. What I find over and over is people say, I can't understand it. And the reason is because, of course, the right wing, and I know you're not partisan, but I'm going to be a slightly bit partisan up here right now. The very far anti-tax wing, I don't even know what you call them right. My grandmother was right wing and she loved Eisenhower. My grandmother loved Eisenhower, who of course was in favor of the top tax bracket for income being 90%. So, but anyway, whatever wing that is way out there in La La Land wing, whose main message is no taxes. Little government, no taxes. Okay? Grover Norquist. But the other side has also a message that's equally problematic because their message is so complicated. It's very hard to understand. It's full of details. So if you're a common ordinary person and you're torn between no taxes, which you think, well, that can't be true, and it's so complicated, I think you're just going to say, oh, forget it. Okay? Just forget it. And this is what we see a lot. People don't vote. If they do vote, they vote for who's going to be the governor, who's going to be the president, but they don't vote on the stuff where they really can make a difference, the parcel taxes, the sales taxes, and things like that. We say in America, people have the right to an opinion, but the simple reality is no one is going to form an opinion if they don't think that anyone is ever going to ask them for their opinion. So a right to an opinion, rights have no meaning without some kind of implementation. Now, what I see here at the League of Women Voters is a group of people with a long history of knowing how to get people engaged, how to do grassroots empowerment. You know, your mission statement. We're a nonpartisan political organization for women and men, which encourages informed and active participation in government and influences public policy through education and advocacy. I noticed you didn't say through money, which is good given your budget situation. No, but it's the right thing. Education and advocacy is how policy should be influenced. Okay? Money is not speech, despite what the Supreme Court may have said. Well, I'm at it for a corporations are not people. And you also say in your principles, we believe, this is what you believe about responsible government, and I think this is part of what we believe at Nonprofits Talking Taxes also, why we want to move our curriculum out as wide as we possibly can. We believe that responsible government should maintain an equitable and flexible system of taxation. I got this right off your website. Promote the conservation and development of natural resources in the public interest. Share in the solution of economic and social problems which affect the general welfare, and promote a sound economy. I read in your vision statement, we believe in the empowerment of the grassroots, both within the league and in communities. We believe in the power of collective decision-making for the common good. You have believed this and acted on it for a long time. And here's the thing, people. What you are, what you believe in, and what you have done is now the most valuable information in the United States today. Because it is not about economic progress. It is about community and how we take care of each other. And the steps to that are a deep commitment to the common good, civic engagement, and building trust. And that's who you are. So I just want to kind of conclude and then open up for questions or comments or whatever. This is an example of stuff we said. Let's lead some commons discussions, okay? I propose these all the time when I do workshops. What about if we said that the retirement age should be 60? This is they keep raising the retirement age. Oh my God, I feel like I can't live long enough to retire. But a lot of economists would say, no, if you lowered the retirement age, you incentivize people to retire at 60, you would create all these jobs, and people could stay working if they wanted to, but a lot of people are just working because they can't retire. That's ridiculous. Okay? What about this notion of mandatory voting? Now, I think this will never happen in the United States, but it's an interesting question for people to discuss. People, and the League of Women Voters, of course, started in the suffrage movement. People gave their lives and have continued to do so around the world for the right to vote, and yet most people in the United States do not exercise that. What's that about? Other countries have solved that. Australia, a number of Latin American countries, by making voting mandatory. And it's just an interesting conversation to have. And then people can say, why it has to be a personal choice, and they step up more in the civic engagement. So we kind of pose some ends there. This property tax, I proposed this in Detroit recently. Why should people be able to pay less property tax when their property looks terrible? When they maintain a dangerous vacant lot, okay? Why should people have to pay more property tax when they fix up their property? That's kind of a weird thing. So there's pros and cons for all these different kinds of things. And we have a number of things in California that are going to be on the ballot or that are moving through the legislature right now. Revenue options. I think we have to look and say revenue has to be one of the options we consider. We cannot balance everything by cuts. And the arguments in favor of cuts have been made. They've been made very well and very articulately. I will not make them here. The arguments in favor of revenue, I think we have to insist on a little bit more. So I think if we kind of step back and you say, what is the League doing? And it's built into your DNA and into the things you believe in. Taking a stand against massive income inequality and the social ills that come out of it. And looking at the economy from the point of view of public health is a whole different way of framing. And yet, it is not that different from what you do now. I encourage you to expand your work as far and wide as you can, to form alliances with as many similar organizations as you can, and continue to stand up for the importance of grassroots community engagement. And I'll just conclude by saying I look forward to being with you on this journey. Thank you very much. I agree, we need to spend a lot more time talking about the common good, absolutely. Yeah, and there probably isn't one absolute definition, but, and it's sort of like also something people know when they see it. But I agree, we're so far away from it, people don't even know exactly what it would mean. It sounds like a utopian idea instead of something that could really happen. Mandatory voting is an example of a conversation that I think is a fun one to start. I'm not necessarily in favor of it. I think it would never probably pass in the United States for a lot of constitutional reasons. But the reason I even put those up there, retirement age, property, is to say that you can't just say to people, what do you think about the common good? Because they'll be like, You know, there was a thing the other day, a group called Public Works went around. They did this little kind of person in the street thing, and they went to this hot dog seller and all these different other people. What do you think about government? You know, people just started laughing. But I thought, well, you know, and they said this is living proof that no one trusts their government. To me, I thought, well, what if you ask them what they think about toilet paper? They'd also laugh. It doesn't mean they don't trust toilet paper. I mean, you know, it's like, I think we have to start, when we start with the grassroots, and I notice this in fundraising, you don't start with great big concepts. You start with, let's say you're having a garage sale, and let's say you decide to add a bake sale to it. How do you price your baked goods? That's what common, ordinary people want to know when they first start out. And then you can go from there to, and years later, you can write a proposal to the Ford Foundation, and this is how it will look. So we start with concepts that are too cerebral, they're too esoteric, they're kind of just confusing. But if you say, wow, what would you think, Mrs. Front Porch, if you had to vote? What? How could that be? And then you're in a conversation about what makes the common good and what doesn't. So that's the idea of that. The main platform we're proposing for nonprofit stock and taxes is that people have to become comfortable talking about taxes. But we've gotten so used to, what passes for civil discourse in the United States is each side lobs insults at the other. And there's no, and then if you're kind of a conflict avoider, you don't love fighting, you just hunker down and hope for the best. We're saying everybody could talk about taxes. So that's our main thing. We're also saying revenue has to be an option, and we're saying that people should think about, for example, the oil severance tax. There are 22 states in the United States that produce oil. 21 of them have an oil severance tax. California does not. Alaska has a 25% oil severance tax. Texas has a 15% oil severance tax. We are right now, in terms of oil, to the right of Sarah Palin, who was the one who got it through in Alaska, 25%. This is amazing. Oil severance tax, soda tax. This is one we should think about. It's a sales tax, so it's a regressive tax. But it also is a tax on each tablespoon of soda. Of course, the two taxes, the two income tax things are going about Molly Munger's and Governor Brown's. I would say we would probably encourage people to think about them and vote for them both. We are eventually in favor. One of the big central points of our presentation is to say something has to be done about Prop 13. It has to be reformed. We have right now, for example, and this is where you start with a simple fact rather than a big esoteric fact. CVS Pharmacy that just bought Long's drugs is paying exactly the same property tax that Long's was paying. Because when a corporation buys property, it doesn't automatically trigger an assessment. Whereas if I bought a new house, I would pay tax on the new price. So this is patently unfair. When I go out all over the place, even to Democratic clubs, people are like, really? I didn't know that. I was talking to a friend of mine, Phil Ting, who's a city assessor in the city of San Francisco. He went to the Noe Valley Democratic Club. Any from San Francisco know that Noe Valley are the Uber Democrats. Okay? They're the Democrats of Democrats. And he said, did you know that Prop 13 applies to corporations? And you know what? In that Uber Democratic Club, only about 3 people knew that Prop 13 applies to corporations. We have to do something about the 2/3 rule. And this is, again, an easy one to explain. Instead of thinking about we have in the legislature, in the Senate, we have more Democrats, 25 Democrats, 15 Republicans. Well, forget about that. Imagine this is a schoolyard. 40 kids want to play baseball. 25 kids, want to play baseball. 15 want to play volleyball. What game do you think those kids think they're going to play? Baseball. But no, here in California, those kids aren't going to play anything until 2 volleyball people come over to the baseball field. So you can explain these things so that people can understand. It's not that complicated, and I think that's another message we have. Thank you for that question.
So I'm a public health professional, but I got to ask a question that people who talk in terms of public health like you and I do might be asked. And that's how can a society be moral if it forcibly redistributes wealth from people who earned it by working hard? Aren't those, isn't income inequality, and if it's true that all those adverse statistics you quoted are associated with income inequality, aren't those things just consequences of the society being moral?
No, I don't think moral about it. I mean, that's a very, I assume that's not really your view, that's a view you're just putting forward to be provocative. That's a very, if it is your view, then we have to talk more. But you hear it a lot. And it's a view that, and I understand some parts of it, because it's a view that's very individualistic. If I am an individual, if I am Steve Zuckerberg, if I am Steve Jobs, well, he's dead now, we can't talk about it. But, you know, if I'm Bill Gates, and I work hard, don't I have the right to keep all my money? And that's a very individualist view. But if you take someone like, for example, Bill Gates, for example, and I'm not going to rag on Bill Gates, I'm going to let his father do it. This is what his father said. Bill Gates Sr., I heard him at a talk recently. He goes, Bill Gates Sr. said, when I walk out of my house, the minute I walk off my porch, I am in an infrastructure that took billions and billions of dollars and hundreds of thousands of people to put together, and not even a billionaire. And he goes, and I do know one. Not even a billionaire would be able to finance by himself. And I think this is the difference between when you talk about what is the common good. All of us have an obligation, of course, to ourselves, but to the good of the whole. And what we see, though, over and over, and why this public health research is so important, that even if you have that viewpoint, what we can honestly say is you can keep all the money you earn, that you claim you earn by working hard, although I question if you work harder than your maid, who earns $5 an hour. So I think this whole question of working hard is very dubious. But you can keep all the money you earn, and it will do you no good. That's really the message that's coming out of public health schools now. So the moral question is, how do we have a society that works for everybody, that everybody has access to a certain standard of life? And the simple fact is Finland, for example, is the world's most competitive economy right now. Finland. You don't have to not have capitalism in your economy in order to have everyone have a certain standard of life. You know, somebody was on NPR yesterday, his name escapes me, very, very wealthy person, and he said, you know, I would prefer to pay more tax. The difference to me between 15% and 25% tax is nothing, but it's a huge amount to other people, and it would put a lot more money back in the hands of the middle class, who would then go out and buy things, and that would increase my income. How hard is this to understand?